The Questions of King Milinda. Book 4. The Questions of King Milinda. Book 4. The Solving of Dilemmas. Chapter 6. 6.1.9. Dilemma the 60th. The Soul in Water. Venerable Nagasena, this water when boiling over the fire gives forth many a sound, hissing and simmering. Is then Nagasena the water alive? Is it shouting at play? Or is it crying out at the torment inflicted on it? It is not alive, O king. There is no soul or being in water. It is by reason of the greatness of the shock of the heat of the fire that it gives forth sounds, hissing and simmering. Now, Venerable Nagasena, there are false teachers who on the ground that the water is alive reject the use of cold water, and warming the water feed themselves on tepid foods of various kinds. These men find fault with you and revile you, saying, the Sakyapatiya Samas do injury to the souls of one function. Dispel, remove, get rid of this their censure and blame. The water is not alive, O king, neither is there therein either soul or being, and it is the great shock of the heat of the fire that makes it sound, hissing and simmering. It is like the water in holes in the ground, in ponds and pools and lakes, in reservoirs, in crevices and chasms, in wells, in low-lying places, and in lotus tanks, which before the mighty onset of the hot winds is so deeply affected that it vanishes away. But does the water in that case, O king, give forth many a sound, hissing and simmering? Certainly not, sir. But if it were alive, the water would then also make some sound. Know therefore, O king, that there is no soul, neither being in water, and that it is the greatness of the shock of the heat of the water that makes it give forth sounds. And here another reason, O king, for the same thing. If water, O king, with grains of rice in it, is put in a vessel and covered up, but not placed over the fireplace, would it then give forth sound? No, sir. It would remain quiet and unmoved. But if you were to put the same water, just as it is in the vessel, over a fireplace, and then light up the fire, would the water remain quiet and motionless? Certainly not, sir. It would move and be agitated, become perturbed and all in commotion. Waves would arise in it. It would rush up and down and in every direction. It would roll up and boil over, and a garland of foam would be formed above it. But why so, O king, when water in its ordinary state remains quiet and motionless? It is because of the powerful impulse of the heat of the fire that the water, usually so still, gives forth many a sound, bubbling and hissing. Then thereby know, O king, that there is no soul in water, neither being, and that it is the strong heat of the fire that causes it to make sounds. And here another reason, O king, for the same thing. Is there not water to be found in every house put into water pots with their mouths closed up? Yes, sir. Well, does that water move? Is it agitated, perturbed, in commotion? Does it form into waves? Does it rush up and down and in every direction? Does it roll up and roll over? Is it covered with foam? No. That water is in its ordinary state. It remains still and quiet. But have you ever heard that all this is true of the water in the great ocean, and that rearing up it breaks against the strand with a mighty roar? Yes, I have both heard of it, and have seen it myself, how the water in the great ocean lifts itself up 100-200 cubits high, towards the sky. But why, whereas water in its ordinary state remains motionless and still, does the water in the ocean both move and roar? That is by reason of the mighty force of the onset of the wind, whereas the water in the water jars neither moves nor makes any noise, because nothing shakes it. Well, the sounds given forth by boiling water are the result, in a similar way, of the great heat of the fire. Do not people cover over the dried-up mouth of a drum with dried cow leather? Yes, they do. Well, is there any soul or being, O king, in a drum? Certainly not, sir. Then how is it that a drum makes sounds? By the action or effort of a woman or a man. Well, just as that is why the drum sounds, so is it by the effect of the heat of the fire that the water sounds. And for this reason also you might know, O king, that there is no soul, neither being, in water, and that it is the heat of the fire which causes it to make sounds. And I too, O king, have something yet further to ask of you. Thus shall this puzzle be thoroughly threshed out. How is it? Is it true of every kind of vessel that water heated in it makes noises, or only of some kinds of vessels? Not of all, sir, only of some. But then you have yourself, O king, abandoned the position you took up. You have come over to my side that there is no soul, neither being in water. For only if it made noises in whatever vessel it were heated, could it be right to say that it had a soul. There cannot be two kinds of water, that which speaks as it were which is alive, and that which does not speak, and does not live. If all water were alive, then that which the great elephants, when they are in rut, suck up in their trunks, and pour out over their towering frames, or putting into their mouths take right into their stomachs, that water too, when crushed flat between their teeth, would make a sound. And great ships, 100 cubits long, heavily laden, full of hundreds of packages of goods, pass over the sea. The water crushed by them too would make sounds. And mighty fish, leviathans with bodies hundreds of leagues long, since they dwell in the great ocean, immersed in the depths of it, must, so living in it, be constantly taking into their mouths and spouting out the ocean. And that water too, crushed between their gills or in their stomach, would make sounds. But as, even when tormented with the grinding and crushing of all such mighty things, the water gives no sound, therefore, O king, you may take it that there is no soul neither being in water. Very good, Nagasena. With fitting discrimination, has the puzzle put to you been solved. Just, Nagasena, as a gem of inestimable value which had come into the hands of an able master goldsmith, clever and well trained, would meet with due appreciation, estimation, and praise just as a rare pearl at the hands of a dealer in pearls, a fine piece of woven stuff at the hands of a cloth merchant, or red sandalwood at the hands of a perfumer. Just so in that way has this puzzle put to you been solved with the discrimination it deserved. Here ends the dilemma as to the water life. 6.1.8 Dilemma the 59th. The guilty recluse. Venerable Nagasena, what is the distinction, what the difference between a layman who has done wrong, and a Sama member of the order, who has done wrong? Will they both be reborn in like condition? Will the like retribution happen to both? Or is there any difference? There are, O king, 10 qualities which abound in the guilty Sama, distinguishing him from the guilty layman. And besides that, in 10 ways does the Sama purify the gifts that may be given him. And what are the 10 qualities which abound in the guilty Sama, distinguishing him from the guilty layman? The guilty Sama, O king, is full of reverence for the Buddha, for the law, for the order, and for his fellow disciples. He exerts himself in putting questions about, and in recitation of, the sacred texts. He is devoted to learning, though he has done wrong. Then, O king, the guilty one entering the assembly, enters it decently clad. He guards himself alike in body and mind through fear of rebuke. His mind is set upon exerting himself towards the attainment of arahantship. He is of the companionship of the brethren. And even, O king, if he does wrong he lives discreetly. Just, O king, as a married woman sins only in secret and in privacy, so does the guilty Sama walk discreetly in his wrongdoing. These are the 10 qualities, O king, found in the guilty Sama, distinguishing him from the guilty layman. And what are the 10 ways in which, besides, he purifies a gift given to him? He purifies it in that he wears an invulnerable coat of mail, in that he is shorn in the fashion of the characteristic mark of renunciation used by the seers of old, in that he is one who is included in the multitude of the brethren, in that he has taken his refuge in the Buddha, the law, and the order, in that he dwells in a lonely spot suitable for the exertion, after arahantship, in that he seeks after the treasure of the teaching of the conquerors, in that he preaches the most excellent law Dhamma, in that his final destiny is to be reborn in the island of truth, in that he is possessed of an honest belief that the Buddha is the chief of all beings, in that he has taken upon himself the keeping of the Vipassanā day. These, O king, are the 10 ways in which, besides, he purifies a gift given to him. Even, O king, when thoroughly fallen, a guilty Sama yet sanctifies the gifts of the supporters of the faith. Just as water, however thick, will wash away slush and mud and dirt and stains, just as hot, and even boiling water will put a mighty blazing fire out, just as food, however nasty, will allay the faintness of hunger. For thus, O king, hath it been said by the God over all gods in the most excellent Majjhima Nikaya in the chapter on gifts. Wiener a good man with believing heart, presents what he hath earned in righteousness, to th unrighteous in full confidence, on the great fruit to follow the good act. Such gift is by the giver sanctified. Most wonderful Nagasena, and most strange. We asked you a mere ordinary question, and you, expounding it with reasons and with similes, have filled, as it were, the hearer with the sweet taste of the nectar of Nirva. Just as a cook, or a cook's apprentice, taking a piece of ordinary nutmeg, while treating it with various ingredients, prepare a dish for a king. So, Nagasena, when we ask you an ordinary question, have you, expounding it with reasons and similes, filled the hearer with the sweet taste of the nectar of Nirva. Here ends the dilemma as to the guilty recluse. The Questions of King Milinda, Book 4, The Solving of Dilemmas, Chapter 7, 6.2.2, Dilemma the 62nd. The lay Arahant. Venerable Nagasena, your people say, whosoever has attained, as a layman, to Arahatship, one of two conditions are possible to him, and no other. Either that very day he enters the order, or he dies away, for beyond that day he cannot last. Now if Nagasena, he could not on that day procure a teacher or preceptor, or a bowl and set of robes, would he then, being an Arahat, admit himself, or would he live over the day, or would some other Arahat suddenly appear by the power of Iti and admit him, or would he die away? He could not, O king, because he is an Arahat, admit himself. For anyone admitting himself to the order is guilty of theft, and he could not last beyond that day. Whether another Arahat should happen, or not to arrive, on that very day would he die away. Then Nagasena, by whatever means attained, the holy condition of Arahatship is thereby also lost, for destruction of life is involved in it. It is the condition of laymanship which is at fault, O king. In that faulty condition, and by reason of the weakness of the condition itself, the layman who as such has attained to Arahatship must either, that very day, enter the order or die away. That is not the fault of Arahatship, O king. It is laymanship that is at fault, through not being strong enough. Just, O king, as food, that guards the growth and protects the life of all beings, will through indigestion take away the life of one whose stomach is unequal to it, whose internal fire is low and weak. Just so if a layman attains Arahatship when in that condition unequal to it, then by reason of the weakness of the condition he must, that very day, either enter the order or die away. Or just, O king, as a tiny blade of grass when a heavy rock is placed upon it will, through its weakness, break off and give way. Just so when a layman attains Arahatship, then, unable to support Arahatship in that condition, he must, that very day, either enter the order or die away. Or just, O king, as a poor weak fellow of low birth and little ability, if he came into possession of a great and mighty kingdom, would be unable to support the dignity of it. Just so if a layman attains to Arahatship, then is he unable, in that condition, to support it. And that is the reason why he must, on that very day, either enter the order or die away. Very good, Nagasena. That is so, and I accept it as you say. Here ends the dilemma as to the lay Arahat. The Questions of King Milinda, Book 4, The Solving of Dilemmas, Chapter 7, 6.2.3, Dilemma the 63rd. The Faults of the Arahat. Venerable Nagasena, can an Arahat be thoughtless? The Arahats, O king, have put thoughtlessness far from them. They are never inadvertent. But can an Arahat be guilty of an offense? Yes, O king. In what respect? In the construction of his cell, or in his intercourse with the other sex, or in imagining the wrong time for the midday meal to be the right time, or when he has been invited to a meal, forgetting the invitation, or in taking to be leftover food which has not been left over. But, Venerable Nagasena, your people say, those who commit offenses do so from one of two reasons, either out of carelessness or out of ignorance. Now, is the Arahant careless that he commits offenses? No, o Kingi. Then if the Arahant commits offenses, and yet is not careless, he must be capable of thoughtlessness. He is not capable of thoughtlessness, and yet the Arahant may be guilty of offenses. Convince me then by a reason. What is the reason of this? There are two kinds of sins, O king. Those which are a breach of the ordinary moral law, and those which are a breach of the rules of the order. And what is a breach of the ordinary moral law? The 10 modes of evil action: killing, theft, unchastity, lying, slander, harsh language, frivolous talk, covetousness, malice, and false doctrine. These things are against the moral law. And what is a breach of the rules? Whatever is held in the world as unfitting and improper for samamas, but is not wrong for laymen. Things concerning which the Blessed One laid down rules for his disciples, not to be transgressed by them their lives long. Eating after sunturn, O king, is not wrong to those in the world, but is wrong to those in the religion, the order, of the conquerors. Doing injury to trees and shrubs is no offense in the eyes of the world, but it is wrong in the religion. The habit of sporting in the water is no offense to a layman, but it is wrong in the religion. And many other things of a similar kind, O king, are right in the world, but wrong in the religion of the conquerors. This is what I mean by a breach of the rules. Now the Arahant, he in whom the great evils are destroyed, is incapable of sinning against whatever is moral law, but he may unawares be guilty of an offense against the rules of the order. It is not within the province of every Arahant to know everything, nor indeed in his power. He may be ignorant of the personal or family name of some woman or some man. He may be ignorant of some road over the earth. But every Arahant would know about emancipation, and the Arahant gifted with the 6 modes of transcendental knowledge would know what lies within their scope, and an omniscient Tathagata, O king, would know all things. Very good, Nagasena. That is so, and I accept it as you say. Here ends the dilemma as to the faults of the Arahant. The Questions of King Milinda, Book 4, The Solving of Dilemmas, Chapter 7, 6.2.4. Dilemma the 64th. What is but not in the world? Venerable Nagasena, there are to be seen in the world Buddhas, and Paksika Buddhas, and disciples of the Tathagatas and sovereign overlords and kings over one country, and gods and men. We find rich and poor, happy and miserable. We find men who have become women, and women who have become men. There are good deeds and evil, and beings experiencing the result of their virtue or their vice. We find creatures born from eggs, and in the water, and in sediment, or springing into life by the mere apparitional birth. Creatures without feet, bipeds and quadrupeds, and creatures with many feet. We find yakas and raksasas and kumbhas and asuras and danavas and gandhabas and pitas and pasakas and kannaras and maharagas, and nagas and supas, and magicians and sorcerers. There are elephants and horses and cattle, and buffaloes and camels and asses and goats and sheep and deer and swine, and lions and tigers and leopards and bears and wolves and hyenas and dogs, and jackals and many kinds of birds. There is gold and silver and the pearl, and the diamond and the chalk and rock and coral, and the ruby, and the masara stone, and the cat's eye and crystal and quartz and iron ore and copper and brass and bronze. There is flax and silk and cotton and hemp and wool. There is rice and paddy and barley and millet and kadrusa grain and beans and wheat and oilseed, and vetches. There are perfumes prepared from roots and sap, and pith and bark and leaves and flowers and fruit, and of all other sorts. We find grass and creepers and shrubs and trees, and medicinal herbs and forests and rivers and mountains and seas and fish and tortoises, all is in the world. Tell me, sir, what there is then which is not in the world. There are 3 things, O king, which you cannot find in the world. And what are the 3? That which, whether conscious or unconscious, is not subject to decay and death, that you will not find. That quality of anything, organic or inorganic, which is not impermanent, that you will not find. And in the highest sense there is no such thing as being possessed of being. Very good, Nagasena. That is so, and I accept it as you say. Here ends the puzzle, as to what is not in the world. The Questions of King Milinda, Book 4, The Solving of Dilemmas, Chapter 7, 6.2.5, Dilemma the 65th. Things without a cause. Venerable Nagasena, there are found beings in the world who have come into existence through karma, and others who are the result of a cause, and others produced by the seasons. Tell me, is there anything that does not fall under any one of these 3 heads? There are 2 such things, O king. And what are the 2? Space, O king, and Nirva. Now do not spoil the word of the conquerors, Nagasena, nor answer a question without knowing what you say. What, pray, is it I have said, O king, that you should address me thus? Venerable Nagasena, that is right what you said in respect of space. But with hundreds of reasons, did the Blessed One proclaim, to his disciples, the way to the realization of Nirva. And yet you say that Nirva is not the result of any cause. No doubt, O king, the Blessed One gave hundreds of reasons for our entering on the way to the realization of Nirva. But he never told us of a cause out of which Nirva could be said to be produced. Now in this, Nagasena, we have passed from darkness into greater darkness, from a jungle into a denser jungle, from a thicket into a deeper thicket. Inasmuch as you say there is a cause for the realization of Nirva, but no cause from which it can arise. If, Nagasena, there be a cause of the realization of Nirva, then we must expect to find a cause of the origin of Nirva. Just, Nagasena, as because the son has a father, therefore we ought to expect that that father had a father, or because the pupil has a teacher, therefore we ought to expect that the teacher had a teacher, or because the plant came from a seed, therefore we ought to expect that the seed too had come from a seed. Just so, Nagasena, if there be a reason for the realization of Nirva, we ought to expect that there is a reason too for its origin. Just as if we saw the top of a tree, or of a creeper, we should conclude that it had a middle part, and a root. Nirva, O king, is unproducible, and no cause for its origin has been declared. Come now, Nagasena, give me a reason for this. Convince me by argument, so that I may know how it is that while there is a cause that will bring about the realization of Nirva, there is no cause that will bring about Nirva itself. Then, O king, give ear attentively, and listen well, and I will tell you what the reason is. Could a man, O king, by his ordinary power, go up from hence to the Himalaya, the king of mountains? Yes, sir, he could. But could a man by his ordinary power bring the Himalaya mountains here? Certainly not, sir. Well, therefore is it that while a cause for the realization of Nirva can be declared, the cause of its origin cannot. And could a man, O king, by his ordinary power cross over the great ocean in a ship, and so go to the further shore of it? Yes, sir, he could. But could a man by his ordinary power bring the further shore of the ocean here? Certainly not, sir. Well, so is it that while a cause for the realization of Nirva can be declared, the cause of its origin cannot. And why not? Because Nirva is not put together of any qualities. What, sir? Is it not put together? No, Ukingi. It is uncompounded, not made of anything. Of Nirva, O king, it cannot be said that it has been produced, or not been produced, or that it can be produced, that it is past or future or present, that it is perceptible by the eye or the ear or the nose or the tongue, or by the sense of touch. But if so, Nagasena, then you are only showing us how nirva is a condition that does not exist. There can be no such thing as nirva. Nirva exists, O king, and it is perceptible to the mind, by means of his pure heart, refined and straight, free from the obstacles, free from low cravings. That disciple of the noble ones who has fully attained can see nirva. Then what, sir, is nirva? Such a nirva, I mean, as can be explained by similes. Convince me by argument how far the fact of its existence can be explained by similes. Is there such a thing, O king, as wind? Yes, of course. Show it me then, I pray you, O king, whether by its color or its form, whether as thin or thick, or short or long. But wind, Nagasena, cannot be pointed out in that way. It is not of such a nature that it can be taken into the hand or squeezed, but it exists all the same. If you can't show me the wind, then there can't be such a thing. But I know there is, Nagasena. That wind exists, I am convinced, though I cannot show it you. Well, just so, O king, does nirva exist, though it cannot be shown to you in color or in form. Very good, Nagasena. That is so, and I accept it as you say. Here ends the dilemma as to nirva. The Questions of King Milinda, Book 4, The Solving of Dilemmas, Chapter 7, 6.2.6, Dilemma the 66th. Modes of production. Venerable Nagasena, what are they who are said in this connection to be karma-born, and cause-born, and season-born? And what is it that is none of these? All beings, O king, who are conscious are karma-born, spring into existence as the result of karma. Fire, and all things growing out of seeds, are cause-born, the result of a pre-existing material cause. The earth and the hills, water and wind, all these are season-born, depend for their existence on reasons connected with weather. Space and nirva exist independently alike of karma, and cause and seasons. Of nirva, O king, it cannot be said that it is karma-born or cause-born or season-born, that it has been, or has not been, or can be produced, that it is past or future or present, that it is perceptible by the eye or the nose or the ear or the tongue or by the sense of touch. But it is perceptible, O king, by the mind, by means of his pure heart, refined and straight, free from the obstacles, free from low cravings. That disciple of the noble ones who has fully attained can see nirva. Well, has this delightful puzzle, Venerable Nagasena, been examined into, cleared of doubt, brought into certitude? My perplexity has been put an end to as soon as I consulted you, O best of the leaders of schools. Here ends the dilemma as to modes of production. The Questions of King Milinda, Book 4, The Solving of Dilemmas, Chapter 7, 6.2.7, Dilemma the 67th. Dead demons. Venerable Nagasena, are there such things as demons, Yaka, in the world? Yes, O king. Do they ever leave that condition, fall out of that phase of existence? Yes, they do. But if so, why is it that the remains of those dead yakas are never found, nor any odor of their corpses smelt? Their remains are found, O king, and an odor does arise from their dead bodies. The remains of bad yakas can be seen in the form of worms and beetles and ants and moths and snakes and scorpions and centipedes, and birds and wild beasts. Who else, O Nagasena, could have solved this puzzle except one as wise as you? Here ends the dilemma as to dead demons. The Questions of King Milinda, Book 4, The Solving of Dilemmas, Chapter 7, 6.2.8, Dilemma the 68th. The Method of Promulgating the Rules. Venerable Nagasena, those who were teachers of the doctors in times gone by, Narada, and Dhamantari, and Agrasa, and Kapila, and Karagisma, and Achala, and Publicakiana. All these teachers knowing thoroughly, and of themselves and without any omission, the rise of disease and its cause and nature and progress in cure and treatment and management. Each of them composed his treatise en bloc, taking time by the forelock, and pointing out that in such and such a body such and such a disease would arise. Now no one of these was omniscient. Why then did not the Tathagata, who was omniscient, and who knew by his insight of a Buddha what would happen in the future, determining in advance that for such and such an occasion such and such a rule would be required, lay down the whole code of rules at once, instead of laying them down to his disciples from time to time, as each occasion arose, when the disgrace of the wrong act had been already noised abroad, when the evil was already widespread and grown great, when the people were already filled with indignation. The Tathagata, O king, knew very well that in fullness of time the whole of the 150 rules would have to be laid down to those men. But the Tathagata, O king, thought thus: if I were to lay down the whole of the 150 rules, at once the people would be filled with fear. Those of them who were willing to enter the order would refrain from doing so, saying, how much is there here to be observed? How difficult a thing is it to enter religion according to the system of the Samagatama? They would not trust my words, and through their want of faith they would be liable to rebirth in states of woe. As occasion arises therefore, illustrating it with the religious discourse, will I lay down, when the evil has become manifest, each rule. A wonderful thing is it in the Buddhas, Nagasena, and a most marvelous that the omniscience of the Tathagata should be so great. That is just so, Venerable Nagasena. This matter was well understood by the Tathagata, how that hearing that so much was to be observed, men would have been so filled with fear, that not a single one would have entered religion, according to the system of the conquerors. That is so, and I accept it as you say. Here ends the dilemma, as to the method in which the rules were laid down. The Questions of King Milinda, Book 4, The Solving of Dilemmas, Chapter 7, 6.2.9, Dilemma the 69th. The Heat of the Sun. Venerable Nagasena, does this sun always burn fiercely, or are there times when it shines with diminished heat? It always burns fiercely, O king, never gently. But if that be so, how is it that the heat of the sun is sometimes fierce, and sometimes not? There are 4 derangements, O king, which happen to the sun, and affected by one or other of these its heat is allayed. And what are the 4? The clouds, O king, and fog and smoke and eclipses. These are the 4 derangements which happen to the sun, and it is when affected by one or other of these that its heat is allayed. Most wonderful, Nagasena, and most strange that even the sun, so transcendent in glory, should suffer from derangement how much more than other, lesser creatures. No one else could have made this explanation except one wise like you. Here ends the dilemma, as to the heat of the sun. The Questions of King Milinda, Book 4, The Solving of Dilemmas, Chapter 7, June 2nd 10. Dilemma the 70th. The seasons. Venerable Nagasena, why is it that the heat of the sun is more fierce in winter than in summer? In the hot season, O king, dust is blown up into clouds, and pollen agitated by the winds rises up into the sky, and clouds multiply in the heavens, and gales blow with exceeding force. All these crowded and heaped together shut off the rays of the sun, and so in the hot season the heat of the sun is diminished. But in the cold season, O king, the earth below is at rest, the rains above are in reserve, the dust is quiet, the pollen wanders gently through the air, the sky is free from clouds, and very gently do the breezes blow. Since all these have ceased to act, the rays of the sun become clear, and freed from every obstruction the sun's heat glows and burns. This, O king, is the reason why the heat of the sun is more fierce in winter than in summer. So it is when set free from the obstacles besetting it that the sun burns fiercely, which it cannot do when the rains and so on are present with it. Very good, Nagasena. That is so, and I accept it as you say. Here ends the dilemma of the seasons. Here ends the 7th chapter.